it's actually a signal that the EU is a trading partner. And that is not a signal not only to the United States, because in these days it's also so important that we tell all other trading partners and potential trading partners that we are open for business. Because if next step is to use the bazooka or part of it, our strategy have to be very clear, and that is to find better deals with new allies.
Now, EU trade ministers have been meeting today in Luxembourg to discuss an approach, a line on Donald Trump's tariffs whacked on the European Union. Let's talk to Nina Dos Santos, the former Europe editor to CNN and our very familiar and friendly EU commentator. Hello to you, Nina.
Good afternoon. Hi, John.
Welcome, Nina. So what has come out of this meeting in Luxembourg? Anything like an agreed position?
Well, anybody who was expecting some kind of laundry list of what the EU would be targeting with its own reciprocal measures against Donald Trump's 20% tariffs announced last week, and also by how much, is probably going to be disappointed. We didn't really get that list. Remember that there's also more discussions about tariffs that are going to take place later on in the week, because they're going to respond to the 25% tariffs that were also announced by the United States earlier on aluminium, steel and cars. But we have had a little bit of an indication of how the EU plans to fight this one, at least for the moment. It's been twofold. On the one hand, we've had both Maros Šefčovič, who is the EU's trade envoy, if you like, for Ursula von der Leyen, and von der Leyen, the head of the European Commission herself, have press conferences and brief reporters to say that they would now be amenable to a zero tariff environment for US products that would include cars, controversially, and also pharmaceuticals, chemicals and industrial goods. So their opening salvo is, look, we are preparing some really tough countermeasures to the 20% that the US has announced last week, but we're going to save our powder for the moment to see whether or not the US would be amenable to start discussions if we were to take US cars with zero tariffs. There is a little bit of a concern there, probably in the automotive market, because US cars are gas guzzlers. Regulatory wise, they're not always equipped for the roads in Europe, and it is unlikely that European consumers would really want them. So probably this opening salvo might fall flat.
All right, Nina Dos Santos, great to have you on. Thank you. Karin Karlsbro then is Vice Chair for the European Parliament's Committee on International Trade and joins us now. Welcome to you, Karin.
Thank you so much.
Can you get us a little bit more information on where you think the position of the European Union on trade with America is going to go? This suggestion of a zero tariff deal, what might that look like?
Well, first of all, the EU doesn't want a trade war with the US. They have been our best ally, our trading partner for decades. But our attempts to facilitate negotiations have so far been met with silence. And from now, the president of the United States is very much aware that the EU has the trade bazooka, as it's called, which means legal instrument to respond. And the EU is strong, is prepared, but of course the EU want to do everything possible to avoid a trade war.
And what sort of tariff compromise is the EU perhaps willing to look at? The idea of zero for zero, what might that be?
Well, it's too early to say, but I think the signal today from the trade ministers is very important, and it's actually a signal that the EU is a trading partner. And that is not a signal not only to the United States, because in these days it's also so important that we tell all other trading partners and potential trading partners that we are open for business. Because if next step is to use the bazooka or part of it, our strategy have to be very clear, and that is to find better deals with new allies and moving on with, for example, the Mercosur agreement.
Okay, so look, two points there. You say the European Union is strong enough to aim a big bazooka at America. In a word, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about hitting US services because they have an American surplus on there? Would the European Union go that far? That would be provocative indeed to Donald Trump. Do you think that might happen?
Well, I think we have to understand that what's happening right now, it's not normal. It's not a trade policy negotiation as it normally used to be. It's something different. It's
but would the EU go that far, do you think, as to hit services from America?
Yeah, but because this is part of this campaign diplomacy we hear from the White House with hostile tone towards the EU, Ukraine, Greenland, etc. And actually, this hits the multilateral system. So the EU can use this bazooka and also hit very sensitive sectors in the US. And I think it's important to signal that. So it's absolutely clear that we don't want to be part of this full-scale experiment that President Trump is actually working on right now.
Okay, but would the EU be capable of reaching a consensus, reaching an agreement? France sounds very tough. Germany more wary. I mean, can you agree?
Well, as up until now, the EU has been united. The member states have been united in many difficult situations. And what we are experiencing right now, it's totally it's something new historically. So I'm sure that the willingness from the member states to be united and react is quite big.
Okay, I guess we will see. Karin Karlsbro, Vice Chair at the European Parliament's Trade Committee. Thank you.
It's a conference after today's Trade Council in Luxembourg.
The current trade situation with the United States, our most significant partner, is in a tough spot. A range of tariffs is hitting a significant portion of EU exports. In fact, 380 billion euros worth of EU exports to the US. So we are talking here some 70% of our total exports are facing tariffs of 20% or 25% or even higher when combined with existing most favored nation tariffs like 27.5% duty on passengers' cars altogether. We have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for cars and all industrial goods. Second, let's be clear. However, engaging the US will take both time and effort. Right now, we are in the early stages of discussions because the US views tariffs not as a tactical step, but as a corrective measure. We are fully prepared to sit at the negotiation table whenever our American partners are ready.